Oh, assalamu alaikum. All right, people. I take it we is live. So, whilst people are tuning in, clicking like and share, I'll just ensure that today's session is uploaded here. So, right, people, tune in, click like, click share, spread the love, the peace, the salam. Hi. بسم الله إن الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا الله أكبر. I want to take a look today at expanding further our journey into Islamic psychology. We should have a good grasp of Islamic psychology. Huh? Kya khayal hai? What do you guys think we should do? It gives us, it better equips us to navigate through these tumultuous waters we call life. Allah. So, right, whilst you guys are tuning in, today we will be taking a look at a theme of wanting, desire, wanting, which is the ground of desire. And how, and first of all, why is this important? Where does it tie in our journey of Islamic psychology? And also, how does it add value to our lives knowing these things? What is the kind of strength? And yeah, how can we tackle this angst, anxiety, this stress, this suffering along this journey, Allah, of this configuration we call the dunya? Huh? So whilst you're tuning in and clicking like, I'll see who's tuned in. We've got the Benjamin 786, Allah bless you. Ibn Farnas, Allah, kya baat hai, haan, kya baat. Ibn Farnas, huh? The one who discovered flight, truly, or is the earliest documented, before the unfortunately modern contemporary outlooks are just very Eurocentric. But Ibn Farnas, legend of Muslim scientific technological discoveries of the past, so many centuries before. Yeah. ज़मीं पे चलते हुए हम रवा रवी में गिरे, मगर आप इतनी बुलंदी से किस खुशी में गिरे. What a poem, huh? What a poem. I'd come across that. It just goes so well with Ibn Farnas as well about the whole heights and flight. Right. Alam Alonzeta. Yes, the audio is great. I did run a quick check today before beginning because of last week. Right. Great video on Bukhari Gate. Shukran. Allah bless you. Some point we should do another video on something like, or maybe a podcast on Bukhari Gate. The problem I find with these things is it's difficult finding people to have that discussion with. Most people either, don't understand the topic to that extent. I mean, it's not to belittle people's understandings, but it is a complicated, it is difficult uncharted territory for many a people. And it's not something easily understood because Bukhari, the kind of is to be understood through the three approaches really, and then kind of a discursive analysis of those three, that you have the epistemological, the ontological, and the phenomenological. वाह चलो ये भी सही है huh? Sometimes you know it must be done, huh? But these three are the what must be looked at, the kind of phenomenon of Bukhari as a phenomenon. So it must be understood from a just from a phenomenological perspective, how it the impact it creates at a psychosocial level, the anthropological development, all of these things, how the legalistic, as a phenomenon as a whole, you have the phenomenological essence, or the case study, or the analysis of Sahih al-Bukhari, or Sahih al-Bukhari, and then you have the kind of ontological, with its being. What is it? Its kind of essence. Its developmental journey, kind of, I guess, divorced from the human journey for a moment, and its essence, its evolution, that is the ontology, its being, and that study. And then you have the epistemological study, which is the study of knowing what we know about it. So in terms of how was it documented, the manuscript kind of journey that takes place after that, how that varies along the way, how the riwayat, first of all, what is extant, and then from that which is extant, what further diversifies into these riwayat, and then the kind of scribes that follow, and the attempts of standardization. Now these three, they are a bit like a Bromian knot, that they intersect in ways, and that is a study. Yeah, that is a PhD. कभी हम भी सोचे थे कि I should do a PhD in this. Why not? Huh? Why not? And then I thought, but I don't like typing. And then Allah, through His mercy, revealed ChatGPT. Ab batao. So what? It's right. So that's, in any case, the session must go on. Right. Strongest solar winds in 20 years. Shukran, I mean, for bringing that to our attention. I mean, the thing is, look, there are things that we can do something about, and there are things we can't do something about. That which we can't do something about, khair, let it be. Vese bhi, it's not like my stressing is going to change anything. So, yeah. Right, let's move for Osman Gul all the way from London. Vah ji vah. All right. ¿Qué tal, compa? All right. How's it going? And well, shukran. I love you too, all of you. Right. So, I do. Somebody said you don't sleep. I do. We'll speak about the Bukhari Gate later. What I'll do is at the end of the session, I'm going to share a link and you guys can jump on and we can have a discussion. Right, so Bismillah. What we took a look at previously in our journey so far, we have understood, we have covered from an Islamic psychology perspective. And psychology, in essence, psyche means the spirit, the soul. It has from there gone on, extended to meaning the mind. And I guess by extension, the self. So from there, the term psychology began in the late, 1800s, and you're going to have this journey coming down since, especially in the Western hemisphere of psychology. And what it tends to be is often the study of the brain, the study of behavior, human behavior, the study of the kind of interaction and psychological interplay that takes place, including complex topics like the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. That's in the Western hemisphere. Islamic psychology would incorporate that, but it would really tie in the psyche, which is this nafs, this ruh that we have, and its bond to al-haq, Allah, the one and only, the real. Okay, so now, and this kind of journey that takes place in understanding what is going on within this ego, within this nafs, within this ruh, this consciousness, what are these difficulties and challenges I'm facing along the way, this angst, existential, or this anxiety, or this state of suffering, or discovering and exploring that is Islamic psychology. Okay, so that's the journey, inshallah, I'm on with you guys for at least several sessions, bi'ithnillah. So we've taken a look at the kind of origin creation story, just looking deep into the ontology of being and why Allah created being. So the earlier videos were on that. I've done that a few sessions ago. Then why Allah created us specifically, what is the purpose of that? And from there we've taken a look at the mirror stage, the formation, identity formation of the ego, this configuration, this story as we come into this world, where you could say, where its first, its origins with being emerging from, as in the famous hadith Qudsi, that kuntu kanzan la u'araf, I was a treasure not known, فَأَحْبَبْتُ أَنْ أُعْرَفْ, I loved that I should be known, Allah says. So from this love, divine love, and this will, Allah from this divine love wills into being the first primordial, unbounded sense of beingness. And that's not a thing in the, like as an object, but beingness itself, which then mirrors to Allah his glory and his majesty, and from there creation would begin with meaning initially, because from being, intelligibility, meaning emerges, and then all kinds of meanings, and whether you want to say the a'yan thabita, these different meanings and realizations, the potentials of Allah's names. This is later what will be taught to Adam. It's also similar to what Plato would say was the kind of concept of the forms and things like this. But we've discussed that, and we've taken a look at from there how the self emerges as an infant, the nafs, the story of who I am. It emerges through this kind of mirror stage, and this divine mirror that we're connected to, because You see, we in and of ourselves are a mirror to the divine. Al-mu'min mir'atul mu'min, the famous hadith we took a look at. And how this ego then is created in this configuration, this identity emerges, which is us. And ultimately we are to kind of shed this, or anytime we try, this shatters. It's in a sense getting through ego annihilation, through fana, getting closer to the real, to al-haq, to Allah. And so we took a look at that in last week's session. Today I want to explore wanting. You see, the nafs, the ego, it has wanting with a capital W, if you like. This is the ground of desire. Why does it, what is this? We're riddled with this throughout our entire existence. Truly in an insatiable sense, and it is often the source of much of our angst, our anxiety, and our suffering. So what is this? Why is this? That's what I want to take a look at, really, and take a look at some of the verses of the Quran, and also explore some psychological underpinnings that we have in contemporary psychoanalysis, but also looking at through the arts, poetry, because the pinnacle of expression that we have, the Ar-Rahman, what is one of the, in Surah Ar-Rahman, that خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ, taught insan expression. And in a way, insan himself is a manifestation of the divine expression. So taking a look at themes like this, really, that हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले, बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले. Hi. This, what Ghalib is saying, that हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले. So many desires, thousands, countless, such that each one of those desires was worth an entire life. Like you could sacrifice yourself over it. हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले, बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान. So many of my desires were manifested, लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले. Hi, but still so few. The lack of satiety, the lack of being fulfilled. And because this will really give us an understanding of this journey today. And here's another lesson by Jaun, Elia, which really will tie in to the core of what we're taking a look at, wanting, the ground of desire. And I'd like us to keep this poem in our working memories today. That hai wo shok jo nahi tha kabhi. That oh, alas, huh? That desire jo nahi tha kabhi, which didn't even exist. हाय वो जिंदगी जो थी ही नहीं. That, damn, that life which never happened, which never was. And just keep that in your mind today, because it is this desire that we're going to take a look at, and we've taken a look at this, and we're going to come back to that, this whole thing of Objet, Petit, the cause of desire. That's something we'll come back to later on today. We're going to circle back to that. Where does this desire come from? Two key terms: al-wujud, beingness. Now, our being is only there because Allah is the ground of being. Allah is wajibul wujud. Allah is true wujud. You see, we have wujud, and we covered this last week, that it's a beautiful word in English, that human being, because it really encapsulates the dichotomous nature, the human side and the being side. Ser humano in Espanol. But so it has this whole, this beauty to it, that human being. And this being, so okay, human part is here. What is this being? It is the fundamental, primordial, the ontological fundamental of reality. But the true being is Allah's being. And we've covered this. Our being, we do exist. It is a reality, but simultaneously, there's an element of non-existence to us. This Adam. Because we are like an emergent property. We are like the reflection that appears and exists in the mirror. It both exists and simultaneously does not exist. You see, because the reflection is there, and you know it's there, but you know it's also not you, because you're over here. So does it exist? Does it not exist? So that is like us, the kind of wave in the ocean. It exists, the ripples in the lake. But what are they? Do they exist? Does the wave exist? There's no particular... A wave doesn't in and of itself exist. It's just a formation, a pattern. So we have wujud, but we have our wujud compared to Allah's wujud is non-existent. But to us, it's 100% existing. In a way, as a poor approximation, it's like understanding a video game. You see, the being within the game exists, but in this world, it doesn't really exist. I mean, it has a kind of existence. Well, it's a game. I've got it on my PC, let's say. Now, but within the configuration, it is as real can be. And thus Allah says, "I'lamu, know, annama al-hayat ad-dunya la'ib." Know that this world, the life of this world, it too is a game. It's a configuration. Lahu, it's a distraction from the real, al-haq. So, okay, keeping that in mind, now this wujud, our sense of being, because there is a sense of adam to it, a void, that is what gives rise to this lacking, because we lack in comparison, because our being lacks. This lacking, this void, this emptiness, one could personify it through the narrativize it through the hadith. often cited in Tafasir when the shaitan sees Adam and says, he kicks him and, you know, kind of like knocks at him and kicks him and says, he thinks, what's so special about this creature? And because he realizes this is some being, he says, Innahu ajwaf. There's an emptiness, a void, a lacking. It's a hollowness. This symbolic hollowness, this void, this lacking is the source, the ground of our wanting. It is of our desire that then desire will become incarnate. It will become the object it locks its attention onto. This in psychoanalysis, the objet Petit, and we'll come back to that a little later on in Lacanian psychoanalysis. It's termed that. So, but this is the ground from where why is it happening? It's happening because of this. What does it mean? It means that we have this as a human condition. We can never get over it. You will never just fulfill your desire. And you know, this hilarious but so true quote by Oscar Wilde that there are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what you want, and the other is getting it. You see, because in life, the moment you get something, all that happens is you no longer desire it. Because the desire was the wanting. It was not the object of desire. In this case, whatever it may be, like let's say a person wanted the latest phone, or they wanted a particular car, they wanted a particular job, they wanted a particular person, they wanted something that it gets locked into as the target, the goal, the object of their desire, the wanting, the thing that the object of that wanting. The moment it becomes fully locked in, you lose interest. You know, that person who's dying for this, if only I had this job, my life would be so different. They get it within 1 year. Sure, you know, they may say, yes, I'm grateful, but everything has, oh, but what about that job? Oh, but the person who desires a person thinks, you know, if I was, oh my God, if I had this person, obsessed with her, obsessed with him, if I was married to them, non-binary, huh? Them, gender fluid, huh? So, yeah, behold, that is it. So, if I was married to them in the plural sense, covering both, all that would happen, and when they are, all of a sudden, that person, that thing, sure, they still may like it, love it, appreciate it, but not in the same way anymore. And it's not a problem with the person or the thing or the status or the career or the job. It is a reflection of our being, which has a lack. It has this hollowness. It has a wanting, an Adam, which wants to be filled. It wants, and that is what it keeps us in this motion throughout our lifetimes, in this constant search. When we're getting something, we want something else. The moment you get it, and one of the tricks to that may be that kind of maintaining this balance almost. And one could say that there is a beauty in how Jannah in the Quran is then posited and postured as this delayed gratification. Because the thing that is out of reach remains a successful object of desire, an object petit, that it remains successful as a target to keep you locked. The moment you obtain it, ah, it's like, what was so special about this anyway? And that is so often seen in, like I said, in all kinds of items. People who are crazy about the latest iPhone, people who are crazy about, there's nothing special about it. The moment they have it, no. People who are crazy about relationships, it's this larger than life pull towards something. The moment, as long as it remains out of reach, it remains powerful as a pull. The moment you obtain it, it loses. It's and that's fascinating, and that's something we could explore. And there's, in relationships, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Zur ghibban tazdad hubban." That's fascinating, from a psychology perspective, psychologizing that the Prophet said to visit with a gap, to keep an absence, this adam and wujud, adam and wujud. Tazdad hubban, you will continue to increase in love. But the moment there's just this wujud, it dissipates. It's like fragrance. You try to capture it, it's gone. Allah. And there is a wisdom in that. Now, this is why I was saying that this poem of Jaun Elia, the Hai wo Shok, Jo Nahi Tha Kabhi, that desire that never truly existed, Hai wo Zindagi, Jo Thi Hi Nahi, that we often, and one of the ways to combat, because this can lead to immense anxiety as well. And you see that here in Surah An-Najm. In verse 24, Am lil insani ma tamanna. Allah. Am lil insani ma tamanna. Does insan get? Allah says, Lillah is al-akhiratu wal-ula. This configuration that you have, this belongs to Allah. The real is Allah. What is to come after this belongs to Allah. Am lil insani ma tamanna. Does insan ever get this desire incarnate? Does he get it? No. It is but a spiral, a downwards, a rabbit hole that we find ourselves in. Am lil insani ma tamanna. And here we see it again in Surah Al-Hadid, verse 14. This, and tamanna is from the root of umniya. Amani is the plural. This desiring. There are other words for desiring as well in Arabic, but this particular one, وَغَرَّتْكُمُ الْأَمَانِ. And this wanting, these desires, they deceived you, they tricked, they misled you. حتى جاء أمر الله وغركم بالله الغرور. Allah. Until the decision or the matter or Allah's command came. And that could be that, it could be in a particular situation, it manifesting. It could also be until the command came for you to move on from this world. وَغَرَّكُمْ بِاللَّهِ الْغَرُورِ. The great deception itself, incarnate. It deceived you about Allah. Allah. Our true bond, our reality with the real al-haq deceived us. And al-gharur could refer to the shaitan, the negativity, the deception incarnate itself. It could refer to the deceptive nature of the configuration of this dunya, of affairs, of matters, anything from in all layers, all levels of this strata, al-gharur. Something to think about. And there is a hadith that which is in Sahih Bukhari and in Muslim, and it's a famous hadith from Anas bin Malik. And it's fascinating that Anas bin Malik transmits a few of these of hadith dealing with this nature of discussion, this whole desires and insan, the deception, and how humans are misled. This is a beautiful hadith which truly captures this objet Petit, this wanting. The hadith says that Lo anna libni Adam wadiyam min dhahab. You know, if the son of Adam, if God's person, a man or a woman, was to have a valley of gold, an entire valley, ahabba an yakuna lahu wadiyan. Or latamanna in another riwayah an yakuna lahu akhar. He would just wish that he had another. You see, because the moment we lock in something to our desire, so long as it remains with it's kind of there but out of reach. If it's entirely out of reach, right, we're working towards it. But if we're not even working towards it, it could just lead to sheer frustration. If it becomes too easy, if it becomes accessed, then we lose interest in it and we just want another. We want the target becomes something else. This hadith saying, even if it was a valley full of gold, you say, yeah, you know, if I had a valley full of gold, Ya Allah, what I would do. And the moment we get it, we say, Ya Allah, if only I had two. It is so true, this fitrah of insan. Right, so this, just reflect on that. You know, there's in relation to that, and the antidote to this, by the way, is qana'ah, that the Prophet taught us. It is contentment, where we bring we curb our wanting. We still have a sense of wanting. We can't escape that. But we learn, you see, you can try to tip the balance through shukr, gratitude, and qana'ah. That Allah, you know, I still have so much. I'm so grateful to Allah. And Allah loves that so much, this gratitude, that his own name, he's taken upon himself as the grateful. Ash-Shakir. So you are this mirror to the divine in that. And by mirroring the divine, you combat that lacking. Because remember, our lacking emerges, our wanting, this objet Petit, emerges from the Adam, from our being, which has an Adam sense to it. But the moment you mirror the divine, His names on earth, Ash-Shakir. It curbs, it constrains, it handles that lacking. So qana'a, okay, that is, so this hadith that we saw here, it really is a fascinating one. It's in Sahihain in Bukhari and Muslim by Anas ibn Malik radiallahu an, that law kana libn Adam wadin min dhahab, you know, um, أحب أن يكون له واديان أو لتمنى أن يكون له آخر. He would only wish that he had another. And there's a beautiful story by Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin, where he tells of a person who is, he's standing, he's bewildered, confused on this street, and he's really upset. And you look at somebody, they're in a state of like just disarray and so bewildered and stressed. And so somebody approaches him and says, well, what is what is going on here? And he says, well, I lost a dinar, a gold piece. I'm so stressed. And this person is en route to the masjid. And he thinks, yeah, you know what, let's do a good deed. Let's help, this person. So, and whoever, the hadith, man naffasa kurba, whoever eases the suffering or anxiety of a person, of Allah, Allah eases their anxiety. Naffas Allahu kurba. So this person says, you know what, have this dinar. Jayar, jile apni zindagi, So Maulana Rumi mentions that this person is so, he's like, oh, he gives it to him and he goes off to the masjid, he prays, he comes back, he sees the person still standing where he was, in a state of, of stress. Stress kya hai? Tawattur. Allah. In Arabic they call it tawattur. And you could call it ta'assub as well, but this sees him in this, and it's the same word witr comes from. So sees him in this state of stress and says to him that, yeah, well, I thought, what's going on? I thought you lost a dinar and I gave you a dinar. So what are you stressed about now? He says, yeah, but if I had my first one, I'd now have two. Allah, Allah. And this goes back to our lesson, which, in Islamic psychology, which we've covered, about most of our suffering is within the imaginary realm. That most of our anxieties, they exist in there. It's when, remember, the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. And most of our suffering is in there. When Mark Twain said that I've been through many things in life. I've been through many catastrophes in life, some of which actually happened. Most of our suffering remains in there, within that realm. So it's to really understand that. And I want us to, with that in mind, take a look at another hadith. So we've got this, and this too is no, this one's narrated by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, I believe. It's the famous hadith a reference to it is in Bukhari and it's in other books as well, that hadha ajalu wa hadha amalu. Amal can be another term for desire, but it carries a more positive connotation linked with hope. Amani seems to be more, that kind of sheer desire coming from the inner ego. Amal can have a positive connotation because this wanting, this ground of being, that we, this desire, it ironically keeps us going. Because you don't want to completely lose all desires in this world. Because that's not because insan has been created, the ideal way is with a balance. You don't, and the Prophet ﷺ exemplifying that in the hadith, that what has been made beloved to him from this world, certain things, and how he takes, this is a blessing from Allah, and he mentioned amongst that, for men, women, it's the highest form of blessing on earth, and then other things as well. So it is not about a kind of hermit, like becoming a hermeticism, or a kind of monasticism, or anything like that in Islam. Rabbaniya, it doesn't exist. So amal is the kind of positive spin on desires, because it's hope. And this hadith, and I guess it kind of goes better with the wording, هذا أجل وهذا أمل, or هذا أمل وهذا أجل. So this famous hadith, and I'll take us through it, that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh said, that the Prophet ﷺ drew with a stick in the sand a square, and then he created this line emerging from it. And then he made these lines either side of that which was inside the square. And this is in a hadith, a Sahih hadith, by the way. And the Prophet said, وَهَذَا أَجَلٌ مُحِيطٌ بِهِ. The square which encapsulates is this person's entire existence, their mortality. That this is death and life. This is all it is for this person. And it's completely encapsulated us. It says, وَهَذِهِ الْخُطَطُ الصِّغَارِ عَلَى عَرَاض. These lines either side. The blue line that you're seeing inside is insan. The green is our mortality, that we are surrounded by this, the reality of us being, of us having no escape except through death. So the green is death. It is which surrounds us and encapsulates us. The purple that you see, the a'rad, these are events, trials, tribulations, catastrophes, tragedies, incidents, ordeals. That's what they are, a'rad. وَهَذِهِ الْخُطَطُ الصِّغَارِ الْأَعْرَاض, the Prophet said in the hadith. That's what they are. They are things that are these happenings, but in a negative, like it's not about negative, but in a tense sense, tension. فَإِنْ أَخْطَأُوا هَذَا نَهَشَهُ هَذَا وَإِنْ أَخْطَأُوا هَذَا نَهَشَهُ هَذَا. If this one missed him, that one got him. If that one missed him, this one got him. Hai wo zindagi jo thi hi nahi. As Jaun Elia is saying. So, and then the hadith goes on to highlight, because it mentions that these وَمَا يَتَعَرَّضْ لَهُ مِنْ آفَاتٍ, like illnesses, calamities, catastrophes. And the hadith goes on to highlight that this part that you're seeing coming out, the red, وَهَذَا أَمَلُ, this is his desires and hopes. They far exceed his or her mortality, our death. But that is the nature of insan. And it's not to, what we don't want to do is just look down upon these things. It's not, these things, they assist us in this dunya. It keeps this drive going. This pleasure principle that we have, it helps us strive. But we just have to remember to kind of maintain this balance, to realize not to become, not to drown ourselves in it, because it will always lack. The moment we obtain it and lock it in, it will get bored of it. It wants something else. And that is the Objet, Petit, as Lacan termed it. And it's the one thing he asked not to translate. Also, it just means the kind of object of the small a, because the big A is the outra, is the big other in psychoanalysis. And I'll speak about that in another psychology session, Islamic psychology with us. But coming back to hai wo shok jo nahi tha kabhi, hai wo zindagi jo thi hi nahi. Hai. And here is an example of this manifesting, because it comes back to that being, and when you get something, how we lose interest in it. That he says, "Hai mujh par tana zan, khud mera ehsas." This is Jaun Elia saying this. That my own sentiments, my emotions are what are criticizing me now. Tamanna is the same word, amani, tamanna. Remember the verse in Surah Najm we covered, that where we took a look at it, where it said that am lil insani ma tamanna. It is the same verb altogether. Am lil insani ma tamanna. Will insan get what he desires like that? The truth is we can't. We can't get it. And he says, tamanna apni कीमत खो रही hai. That desire is losing its value. This poem encapsulates and instantiates an example of Objet, Petit, wanting the ground of desire, where desire emerges from, this lacking, this adam in Sheikh Ibn Arabi's term. So I'm combining this for us and kind of synthesizing, taking Sheikh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi's legacy and kind of synthesizing it with our way of understanding the psyche today through psychology and its diverse branches like psychoanalysis and Lacanian psychoanalysis. So you have this objet petit, this void that can never be fulfilled. It is the wanting itself. And he says, tamanna apni कीमत खो रही hai. That desire is losing its value, that my own emotions are criticizing me. है मुझ पे ताना जन, खुद मेरा एहसास, तमन्ना अपनी कीमत खो रही है, गम फुरकत का शिकवा करने वाली. He says, look at this woman who would complain about not, that I'm not with her. गम फुरकत का शिकवा करने वाली, मेरी मौजूदगी में सो रही. Hi, Jaun Elia. He says that woman that would complain that I wasn't there for her in my presence is now asleep. So there's a kind of, a satire, a kind of tongue in cheek with what he's saying. It's so beautifully expressed. It truly captures the psychology of the nafs between wujud wal adam, this kind of ajwafiyya, this kind of hollowness, this void that we have for the wanting, the objet petit. I think it so beautifully captures that, this poem of Jaun Elia. I think very few things have captured it so epically to kind of encapsulate it and then give an example of it. That he's saying that, this. So in many relationships, you can't get enough of the other. The person, because there's that, you see, going back to the hadith, the way to maintain the relationship is with that. It's kind of like, that anti-lock brake system. It doesn't fully stop and it doesn't keep moving either. There's this pause, move, pause, move. So there's this arm's length feature created in the desire that the hadith says that zur ghibban tazdad hubban, that you see that, distance, what is it? What's the saying in English? That distance makes the heart grow fonder. That there is some gap, some attaining, some distance, some attaining. And the hadith mentions that. Now you combine that with qana'ah, with a kind of satisfaction of not a satisfaction, a contentment. And you kind of handle it by mirroring shukr, gratitude. a mirror to the divine. Now, here, so in relationships, people will, and this is a beautiful example, that people will be like, oh, they can't get enough of the person, especially when the person isn't there. They'll be like, oh, phoning, texting, oh, God, if only, oh my God, if you were here now, I'd do this, I'd do that, or I can't get enough, the longing, am lil insani ma tamanna. Allah is truly knowing of our reality. So this insan that is so much like this, and in the words of Jaun Elia, he's manifesting that on the tongue, on the speech of the woman who wanted to be with him so much. She's, you're not here. Why are you not here? Where are you? Why don't you come back? Why don't you, this shikwa is to complain. Ghame furqat, the melancholy, the suffering of furqa, of this separation. And he says that, look, hai mujh par tana zan, khud mera ehsas, that my emotion is criticizing me. Tamanna apni कीमत खो रही hai. Desire is losing its value. The object Petit is moving on. Ghame furqat ka shikwa karne wali, that the one who would complain incessantly about not being here, about Jaun Elia, meri maujudagi mein so rahi. And now that I'm here, is fast asleep. As in, what he's trying to say is in, all of that betabi, that excitement is gone. Tamanna apni कीमत खो रही है. So I thought that's so beautifully one captured by Jaun Elia and then instantiated. And this brings back that Ghalib's famous line of Hazaron ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पर दम निकले, बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान, लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले. And this goes back to, in psychoanalysis, the A you have in the middle is the objet petit A. And this is what Lacan, in Lacanian psychoanalysis, has mentioned, that when you put the three modes of dimensions, or the orders, the imaginary order, which we can call the alam al-khayal, the alam al-mithal, the symbolic, and al-haq, for insan in our human being sense, that there is this center which is lacking, this void, or this ajwafiyya, as I would say, or this adam, which results in this wanting. And he called it, was to, as in by, he meant the non-capital letter A, because the capital letter A was the other. And that's to do with the symbolic order, and can be with the imaginary as well. And we'll come back to that in another. That is this sense of the other, the big other, in psychology, in psychoanalysis, Lacanian psychoanalysis, is the, the horizon to which we theatrically perform in our day-to-day lives. This kind of being watched, being seen, being on a stage, being a main character, being, this ego ideal, this kind of, this big other that it is inseparable from our psyche and our existence within this dunya. It's inseparable. And this is why it really makes issues like istighatha and tawassul and things like that very complex issues. They're not as simple as, some people think, even if we deem them, sometimes some behavior in them, as religion improper. So it is not, for somebody to ask at a grave or at a shrine is not how Islam teaches us that we ask Allah, but it is an incredibly complex issue from a Lacanian psychoanalytic perspective, because human beings cannot be distinguished from the symbolic other. And it's only because people don't understand psychology, they don't understand how that works, that they reduce it in this strict binary sense to, oh, this is shirk. And I'm not saying it may be shirky in nature, but when being done by Muslims, it is not taking them out of the fold of Islam, even if it is a kufr in and of itself. So not every kufr results because it's an ignorance. We don't call the Muslims kafir, but the action itself is deemed an act of kufr. But there are layers, and we'll cover this in an Islamic psychology session as well, that there are layers between shirk, there are degrees. There's, or I would say, not even degrees, dimensions, that there is shirk, there is kufr, there is jahl. Now these may overlap. So Christians, for example, by the Quranic paradigm, are not referred to as mushrikeen, even though they clearly do shirk with Jesus. But in Islam, we don't refer to, the Quran doesn't anyway. The Quran clearly refers to Christians as Ahlul Kitab. It refers to them, Allah says, لَقَدْ كَفَرُوا. They are kuffar, but they are not the mushrikeen. So there is a whole dialogue to be unpacked here, that what is shirk? Why is shirk absolutely unforgivable? What is kufr? Somebody could say something, do something which is kufr, and then what is jahl? And jahl may permeate all of these, and it may be a category in and of itself. And that's something very, from a psychoanalytical perspective, it's incredibly complex, because human beings, our psyche, it exists in these orders. It exists in the imaginary and the symbolic order. Much of our world is psychosocial, more than we actually think. So, how much we all recognize our world is psychosocial, and our world taps into the symbolic order. It taps into culture, for example. It taps into language. How does language exist? How do rules exist in society? Rituals. All of these are part of the symbolic order, which then taps into the imaginary, the world which is created within alamul khayal. And it takes up much more of our world than we think. So, for example, what we value. What are values? They just exist in there. What are likes? They exist in there. What is my story, myself, my ego, me? It exists only in here. The way I see the world, the voices in my head, they are only exist in my alamul khayal to me. Me as a story exists there. What is going on in the world? Now, what is going on in the world does tie in with the symbolic psychosocial. It does tie in with people. I'm not saying, this is not to say that nothing exists out there and it's only no, but it's like saying, you see, it's a bit like saying that, you take a computer game, or you take a computer, not even a game. You take a computer, an operating kind of system. So you take Microsoft Word and Microsoft Office and files and spreadsheets and, documents and, I don't know, photographs and different things. Now, when you reduce the kind of software down to its fundamentals, it's operating on just ones and zeros. But to you here, it doesn't look like that. It looks like, oh no, here is my PC folder, here are my documents folder. It's a yellow kind of manila colored, something that looks like a folder as well. I click on it, I can see documents, I can see spreadsheets, I can see graphs, but that's the manifestation of it. But in its true essence, it is reduced to just coding. So we know that, although we don't feel it. Like if you didn't know that, you wouldn't feel it to be true. So similarly, most of our world it's part of the imaginary order and the symbolic order. Now that's not to say things aren't there. People are there, but so much of what we do is part of that we can't. It's difficult for us to differentiate at times. For most people, it's very difficult to differentiate. People, even the sense of being, the fact that people are not their thoughts. For many people, they can't differentiate that you are not your thoughts. That are you your thoughts, or are you the one having the thoughts and listening to them? That is the more true sense of your being. So just to put that back into perspective, this is how Lacan had kind of the objet petit, just coming back to that. So he had differentiated between the otro, the as we would say in Spanish, otro with an O, but in French, because he was French, it was the A, so the capital A, the big other. And we'll speak about that, the symbolic or the other. And the reason I digressed there was to highlight that such issues of the symbolic other are very complex, and people sometimes reduce them to a simplicity of saying, well, this is shirk, this person is a mushrik. It's not true. Even if what they're doing is wrong, I am saying, look, that practice is wrong and it is kufr, but it's not how these certain people are describing it as this person is now a mushrik. No, because they are engaging the symbolic other, the big other, and that is inseparable as a human entity, and we'll come back to that in another future session. So this is how the small a was for the so you've got the caps lock and you've got the small letter a, which was for objet petit a, the object of this desire, which is what we've been speaking about today, wanting. So this is really to bring in to kind of wrap that up. You understand now why Oscar Wilde was saying that there are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what you want, and the other is getting it. Because once you get it, you just want something else. It's just another tragedy. So something which you loved so much, now you lose value for it. Tamanna apni कीमत खो रही है, as he said. तमन्ना अपनी कीमत खो रही है, huh? So this going back to Jaun Elia's kind of poem there. So people, this concludes really, and this was why I felt this was such a powerful poem for us today. This, it really does cover it. That hai wo shok jo जो हाय वो शौक जो नहीं था कभी, that हाय वो शौक जो नहीं था कभी. Because today we've been speaking about the Adam, something that doesn't exist. But ironically, it kind of manifests with all these other things going on. So things can do that, things which exist and don't exist, like the number 0. It exists and doesn't exist, but its existence can give structure to so many other entities. So similarly, this Adam, this ajwafiyah, this hollowness, this void, this lacking gives rise to this shawk, to this tamanna, to these umniyat, these amani. And hai wo shawk jo nahi tha kabhi. It didn't truly exist. Hai wo zindagi jo thi. Wow. So that kind of sums up today's session on Islamic psychology, looking at objet petit, wanting as the ground of desire, this tamanna that we have, tamanniyat, and why it is inescapable. But it's not all bad news. It has a positive side to it, that it keeps us going. This hedonic treadmill can be, it can be terrorizing and traumatizing, but it can also be used with a balance. If used with a sense of qana'a, contentment, and shukr, with this balance, it can maintain a very healthy lifestyle. And so I want to share that with us and take a look in the process at some where this has been expressed in poetry, where it's been expressed by Jaun, Elia, by Ghalib, where it's been expressed throughout literature, Lacan, psychoanalysis, where we see this clearly, standing out in the Quran in these verses, Am lil insani ma tamanna, or gharratkum al amani. These kind of verses and the ahadith where the Prophet says, Hada amalu wa hada ajalu, or um, really instantiated in the hadith of Anas bin Malik in Sahihain, that Lo kana libni Adam wadim min dhahab, if we had a valley, we would just desire to have another, because the moment we have it, we move on to another object of desire. And the hadith teaching one way of not just becoming um, not becoming crushed with this, but rather maintaining a balance, and that could be done through qana'a, and it could be done through, and it's amazing that qana'a kanzun la yafna, the Prophet said, that it is an non-perishing treasure, and in some ways, because it's linked to the divine. Shukr, it's reflecting that mirror to the divine. And Allah in the Hadith Qudsi says, Kuntu kanzan, Allah. That the true treasure, the kanz, was Allah. And qana'a is a kanz that mirrors the kanz of the divine. So, just really wrapping that up and coming full circle with that, almost, as you could see in the Lacanian sense, coming full circle to this object, Petit. May Allah grant us all ease and make this journey of our existence, a beautiful one, full of unveiling mysteries, wonder, amazement, contentment, gratitude, love, compassion, and adventure. Ameen. So that's today's session. I'll share the link if some of you want to share some thoughts. But other than that, then that was what today's session was about. Somebody mentioned about atoms, and that's true, and that's something which comes back into our adamiyah, our non-being, not our existence and non-existence, that material matter only appears to us because of the formation. It is 99.9% empty space, non-existence. But it doesn't appear that way to us. These atoms at a atomic level have this barrier. They repel because of the electron, the kind of field it creates through this kind of force field. But it's a force field, it's not actually matter in the sense. But then that gives rise to molecules, compounds, matter, material. And so as you get, as you keep kind of peeling away or removing the veils, kashf, as you keep doing kashf, because this tradition of ours, traditional Islam, it is anchored in this tradition of kashf, mukashafa, of unveiling these mysteries, of removing the veil of this configuration into the realm, the alam al khayal, the barzakh. Right. Allah bless you all. Right. Let me share the link. Let's see. somebody's saying, look, could I sit back in the library? In time to come, I'm sure I will. Right. Right. So an atom is so strong, even splitting one is the atomic bomb. Yeah, so the atom, you see, it's not the atom itself. So it's crazy because you'll have the four fundamental forces, you're going to have gravity, but you'll have the electromagnetic force, and then you have the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force. Now the weak nuclear force allows for decay and kind of radiation essentially, but the strong nuclear force is what holds atoms together, holds it, glues this so strong, and the ratio between them of being 100 to 1, and so it is that powerful that when we split the atom, that force erupts. I mean, who would think that such power was hidden in plain sight? Allah, we truly haven't understood this configuration. Right, so yeah. Yes. Look, we're on a journey, right? You see, this longing for certain things that you're longing for, it is just a void that you have within yourself, that we all have. We have to learn to understand ourselves and to keep moving through this journey of ours. Yeah, there was years ago, for many years, there was this Monday Nights with Mufti, and that had an evolution of itself, interesting as it was, and some parts, let's say, were informative, some hopefully were very helpful, some proud moments, and some maybe not so proud. Some maybe in hindsight embarrassing, but such is life, such is this dunya, such is us as people, such is our story of the ego, of the nafs, of the self. And yeah, and so many years later, here I am, and I'm now in my mid 40s. So when I began that, I was still in my 30s, and so I think I began it in 2017 or something, and it's now 2024. And a lot of things have happened, and a lot of my own journey of self has been on such a journey that I feel as if at least two decades I feel have passed. This is how I feel, that my kind of apprehension of time. So yeah, so that's how that right is. Um, right, so there you go. Right now, um, right, okay, I'm going to share the link. Let me share the link again. There you go. Right, so, finally caught you online, Mufti. What's this? The UK time and the Middle East don't go together. It's 4 a.m. in the morning. Allah, Allah. Well, as they say, it's 1 a.m. somewhere. Ah, let me. I've shared the link, and if you want to, if you have any questions, I'll. Right, we've got Thiermo Modemba. Assalamu alaikum, Thierno. Sorry, Thierno. How are you doing, Sako? You're on.
Wa alaikum salam.
Uh,
I was thinking about Mufti. When will you you know write your memoirs?
God, that would be interesting.
The,
And there's so much that I could just never put in there.
since 2017, you said
is
that you
is
started
no,
this
that was Monday nights with Mufti I began.
Monday nights. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
when they said that was in, you know what it was? It's fascinating the
Mhm,
journey that it began. I think originally, um, it began. I think it was something like 2009 or something. It
yeah.
began originally as a radio show,
Radio.
radio show. Yeah, I used to
Uh,
do in the Midlands here in Birmingham, UK. I began this radio show, and I named it Monday Nights with Mufti because it was on a Monday night, and it was an Islamic station. It was Unity FM, and so and I did that for a little while, and then I stopped that, and then I started the radio show again. I think it may have been 2010, 2011, something like that. And I did a fiqh version called Friday Night Fiqh. So I would kind of go over some fiqh works and books, and I would take live Q&A on the radio show, and on the radio station Unity FM. And then what happened is they had some break again. So I can't remember. I must have left it for a little while. And then I resumed it again. I think it must have been 2012, 2013, that kind of time. But this time, the slot they gave me was once again a Monday. And
mm,
and it was a Monday evening slot. I think I used to have the 8 p.m. slot. And and this time I wanted to do I was doing a more open discussion on relationships, questions, fatawa. I wasn't going to, with Friday night fiqh, I was just going through fiqh. I was going through actually a textbook at one time called the Qawaneen Fiqhiyya in Maliki fiqh, and I was just taking questions. Here it was kind of more opened up, the kind of, opened up the floor to any questions. I would have a theme. I was taking a look at, there were certain themes. There was one called Relationships Unraveled. So I would look at just kind of angles and permutations of relationship dynamics, and I would just discuss them and have people call in, and it was kind of a bit of miscellaneous, but it had a theme to it. And that I then called once again based on my previous many years ago show called Monday Nights with Mufti, because it was a radio show. It was about 8 p.m. It was on Monday nights. So that ran for about, I think it was about a year, 2 years, or something like that. So that stopped. Now, when that stopped, several years later, Facebook Live had, so in between, I was just doing some live classes, actual classes. So I taught in here in Birmingham. We did fiqh once again. We did the Ashmawiya Maliki fiqh. We did the uh, Foundations of Islam by Qadi Iyad. These are old courses. They're probably about 10, 11 years old now. They're on YouTube, the audio.
yes, yes, they're
On
on
my,
YouTube. Yeah.
yeah. Then I did a brief seerah by, that was Ibn Faris al-Maliki. And then I did the history of Al-Andalus, which is also on YouTube.
YouTube.
And so I did then some hadith. And so as the years were passing by, I started doing some hadith, mustalah al hadith courses we did, and a few things here and there. And I would have some live Q&A just in person. And at that time, I think Facebook had began its live streams. I think it was 2016, but it hadn't rolled it out yet. So you couldn't get it unless you were already, Facebook chose you. You couldn't just opt for it. So, and I think in 2017 they rolled it out for everyone. So, then it's the nobodies like me were like, okay, let's do. So I just clicked live and I did a live stream and people came on and I started, answering questions, talking, and then I did it again and again and then people said you should do it weekly. We look forward to it. So I ended up doing it on Monday nights. And because it was a Monday night, I just resorted back to the old radio show name, Monday Nights with
Like,
Mufti. And so this kind of just continued until for many years until I stopped it. And then when I stopped it, I thought, halas, enough of this. Because I realized that what that had done, there's a cost benefit. So there's a benefit, but then there's a cost. And the cost was that, along the journey, I think I'd allowed myself to become hijacked by entertainment. And I didn't really, and that the cost of that was that it had jeopardized at least to a portion, to what portion is subjective, but it had jeopardized and compromised the the target and goal of what I was trying to do in the beginning. So and I'm sure along the way, we had many laughs and we had, and there was a lot of laughter and there was a lot of fun, but it did compromise my initial journey to a certain extent. So yeah, so from that I went to the meaning with Malm. And then from there, I did start tafsir, which I will go back to. But for now, I
sure.
thought, with this mystical, I really, because I found myself on this journey for, better part of a year, really looking into all of this Islamic psychology, I thought, well, this is fascinating. So this is a summary of events, Tierno. Allah,
Yeah,
Allah,
yeah,
me
that's
sharing it with you.
with a glass of, I think, Coca, I don't know, Coca-Cola, or it is the secret sauce. I don't know.
Say that again, sorry. This
Yeah, yeah, a glass of soda.
Toba Toba, no, no.
Toba.
Kalla, definitely not Coca-Cola. I've boycotted Coke
Ah,
and
okay,
all
okay,
of
okay.
that. I've boycotted that. We just have to resort to other. Even to be honest, I do, generally I've quit a lot of these just kind of fizzy drinks and all of this.
Mm,
I've
mm.
quit a lot of this. I resort to just drinking, like I just get loads of those bottled waters and just but today, none of them were cold. And I thought, today was exceptionally in the UK, was very warm today, exceptionally warm.
Yeah.
And so I thought, cello, have a drink. Why not? So,
It's very
right.
interesting. You know, you know about Monday night with Mufti. You know, you were talking about the cost. For me, the benefit you have to stress. I have to stress about the benefit because it kind of help people, you know, being free
Yeah.
about expressing their belief
Yeah.
because you know internet people were bullying people to think
Yeah.
also were having you know different opinion about a same thing
Yeah.
a
That
topic
is true. Yeah.
and
That is
yeah
so true.
and
Yeah.
yeah you helped remove the shackle about for many people
Yeah. And,
including myself so
just today I was seeing something online, as in somebody shared it on a group,
mhm.
and it was about they were highlighting that this age of Aisha thing again. There's some
Yeah.
live stream. Um, there's that gamer who is now Muslim. I believe he's Muslim, unless I'm getting it wrong. Sneeko or
Yes, Nico. Yeah.
Sneeko, yeah. So I think he's
Mhm.
Muslim now, isn't he?
Yeah, it's Muslim.
So there was something that somebody was sharing about his discussion on the age of Aisha and
Mhm.
something like this. And I'm not sure what his position or not even whether his position matters. He's obviously just embraced Islam. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what he's teaching or what he's allowing people to discuss on his show, because maybe he has I'm sure he has a big following. Now, but this age of Aisha, and people were sharing the comments on the group,
Mm-hmm.
on this group that I'm, just some of the comments from there. And I just felt to myself that this is so, you know, absurd. Like, the way this has been hijacked from Muslims, this discussion,
Mm-hmm.
that somehow, this age of Aisha, this being this little girl, which clearly the evidences show that that was not the case.
So many
Clearly,
evidence. Yeah.
so many evidences. How can
Mm-hmm.
people not take a holistic view? And even if somebody felt Sahih Bukhari was this
Mm-hmm.
ultimate around which, they're not prepared to. So most Muslims throughout the entirety of Islam
Mm-hmm.
have always considered a hadith khabru ahad. And khabru ahad means that even that they are good enough to go by, that's a better definition. Good enough. They are not 100% conclusive. Nobody, generally speaking, through our tradition, believed in the qat'i nature. There were one or two odd individuals that
Yeah.
did believe in a qat'i nature of a khabrul ahad sanad, but
Senate.
it
Yeah.
is rationally defied, it's
Mm-hmm.
rationally flawed. Like, you couldn't, I mean, for me to say that, I heard from such and such, who heard from such and such, who heard from over
Mm-hmm.
generations. Like, let's just say, for example, if you were to transmit something from your great grandfather, even now, this is within the same family.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, my father said, his father said that his grandfather one day, or so my great grandfather, my great great grandfather, let's say,
Yeah. Yeah.
one day said this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Verbatim.
imagine, verbatim, exactly. Now imagine
Verbatim.
I keep this within my family, so it's not even
Yeah.
strangers. It's
Yeah.
within my own family. I say, my
Mm-hmm.
father said, that my grandfather said, that my great grandfather said, that my great great grandfather one day, whilst visiting this place, made this statement like this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the chances that some words here or there, or there's a chance that I get this wrong,
Mm-hmm.
it's clear, self-evident knowledge. Like this should not even be a debatable, that the epistemology for that just clearly shows that there must be a margin. So you could take it as good enough that, what, I believe it's valid because, my dad and his dad and his dad all had great memories. Okay, fine, fine, fine. Good enough. But there is a margin to err, which is undeniable. It's humanly undeniable. And
Mm-hmm.
so now so with the exception of a few people, and I know within the Salafi movement, they kind of took this attitude as well, some of them, but it is really rationally flawed that you couldn't, human beings don't accept these things, and that, that there's no way that you could have ever made a mistake ever. That doesn't, that's not even Islam.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to take now these ahadith, where even if you said the riwayah of Bukhari was good enough, and you ignored the holistic data,
Mm-hmm.
you ignored the circumstantial, the kind of, the entire narrative, you ignored all of that, and you almost had this very kind of tunnel vision on this one hadith. Even then, you would be wary if it was something that would add, if it appeared insulting to the prophet,
Mm-hmm.
you would be weary. It's like Jalaluddin Suyuti in his Hawil al-Fatawi. He has this fascinating case study from Egypt in his day and age, where there's two people having an argument in the marketplace, And one of them, he says, to the other one, he's cussing him, he's insulting him, and he says, what the hell, what do you know? You're just a shepherd, and you're just a goat herder. You just got goat and sheep. What the hell do you know? And that person says, well, if I'm a shepherd, so what? The prophet was a shepherd. Now, this statement of his was said in a marketplace. So this matter gets reported to the local authorities in his day and age. Now, the local magistrate, the Qadi, happened to be Maliki. And Malikis are obviously super harsh in defending the honor of the Prophet. So this person who was getting bullied and who in defense said, look, so what? You're calling me a shepherd, but the Prophet was a shepherd. The Maliki Qadi grabbed him and he said, forget about the other guy. There's a chance that you're going to be in some very, very serious punishment that could even reach capital punishment. You could even, in their day and age, could have even been executed by the state. Now, the person said, well, what did I do? And he said, well, you insulted the Prophet. And he said, well, I didn't insult the Prophet. I said, but the Prophet was a shepherd, which he was a shepherd. And he said, no, because look, that person mentioned that in a negative context. You're mentioning, affirming the Prophet in a context that is now negative. So you are blaspheming against the Prophet. So you are now facing the death penalty. Now, obviously, sometimes Malikiya, the Malikis overdo it sometimes. Well, it happens, man. It happens.
No, it's love, it's love, it's love, it's love, it's love.
It's coming from a place of love, man. Because don't worry. Because don't worry, just hug me, hug it out, and whilst we're hugging, I'll just
I mean, just
and it's all love. So now what happens? Jalaluddin Suyuti says that, well, they found out, and then they kind of petitioned that this case be transferred to another Qadi who was Shafi'i, and then they do this whole thing, and eventually the guy gets in trouble, but he gets off. As in, he there's some trouble, but it's not too severe. But then Jalaluddin Suyuti writes in his Hawil al-Fatawi this incident, but then he gives the ruling, and he says that. He says what the Maliki Qadi said was right, but he says we don't agree with the punishment being like that, but we agree with the ruling. He said that this person should never have brought the Prophet's name into any narrative that is negative. So, so if somebody is insulting you for something, or if this narrative is negative, you don't bring the Prophet's name into it out of love and honor for the Prophet ﷺ. So today, in this era of this, this abominable phenomenon of pedophilia that we see, especially in the Western world, right now, to bring the Prophet's name in this context, it is a blasphemy. It is insulting to the honor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as Muslims, we should never ever allow that. And so it is a shame. And then people double down, and then they hijack this narrative. This is somehow the bravado of Islam that we ha, so what? We did it, and what? Yeah. And they'll say things like, aha, but King Richard the so and so, King James had a wife who was 10 years old.
Yeah, there were an argument. They said, "Oh no, the kids back then were strong at 6 years old."
Oh yeah, so they'll say, "Oh, but back then, children were somehow they looked like 30-year-olds when they were 8-year-olds." I mean, this. I don't know what. I don't know. These people clearly don't have a grasp of human history, because if you read that unfortunately, due to things like sometimes a shortage of resources, people suffered more, as they do still today in certain parts of the world where there's a scarcity of water, a scarcity of you have to remember certain parts like Mecca were not fertile. And even though Taif was fertile and other places, a lot of, the Quran says, that this valley of Mecca does not have any crops.
Mm-hmm.
So so to somehow say that people back then were really healthy, uh, I mean, it depends what you mean by healthy, but it doesn't. They definitely didn't have 7-year-olds walking around looking like 25-year-olds. That definitely didn't happen. And a clear hadith in Sahih Bukhari, you see, and
Mm-hmm.
this really seals. This is a doorstopper that Ibn Umar comes to the Prophet to participate in a battle, in the battle of, is it Badr or Uhud? He comes to participate.
Mm-hmm.
And the Prophet says to him, and he says in the narration that I was, I think, 14 at the
14,
time,
14, yeah, 14.
something like that, he says. And the
Mm-hmm.
Prophet says to him, "You're too young, go away." And then he
Mm-hmm.
says he came back a few years later, and the Prophet said, "Okay, now you can come."
Mm-hmm.
But who did participate in the battle of Badr and Uhud? Aisha,
Aisha, yeah.
radiallahu anha.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, she was helping the wounded, but Ibn Umar could have helped the wounded.
Mm-hmm.
You know, surely if you're saying Aisha was a 9-year-old girl, then a
Mm.
14-year-old boy can do more, good in carrying things and pulling people than a 9-year-old girl can do. So
Yeah.
it's because she at the time was 19, 20 by that time when Uhud had happened. And she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't 14. And if these 14-year-old were like 30-year-old men back then Ibn Umar would have had no problem in being
Mm-hmm.
allowed to, he was the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu,
Mm-hmm.
great genes. And so there would have been no issue in him attending the battlefield, even if it was to help. But he was still deemed a child.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I think that just really is a doorstopper to the whole thing. But yeah, it is, it's it's fascinating. These
Always
discussions
fascinating.
unfold. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's always
shukran.
fascinating.
Shukran,
Thanks a lot.
Tierno. It's a
Thanks a lot,
pleasure
Mufti.
speaking to you. Allah bless you
Yeah.
and speak to you again. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. People, Tierno, always a pleasure to speak to him. And he was back again. And who do we have in the studio? We have Mohib Al Arghand Diwal. Let me just bring him up. Oh, Assalamu alaikum, Mohib.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Mufti.
وعليكم السلام يا محب الله الله.
Thank you very much for
Right.
giving me a chance to talk with you live
Allah, it's a pleasure. Where are you joining us from, Mohib?
from California, USA, California, San Francisco.
All
Yeah,
right, California. Wah, wah, wah. Always such a cool, sounds like always such a cool place.
yeah,
Ah, right. So, all right. So, shukran for joining us.
yeah.
Talk to us. What's if you have some thoughts you'd like to share, or something you'd like to discuss.
Yes. Well, I'm honored to talk with you live, and really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I know
Allah.
you talked about some of these issues, some of the your topic about nafs and desires and tamanna,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
very. I mean, I listened very carefully, and I just want to know whether the relationships between nafs, desire, tamanna, and all,
mm,
and shaitan. So,
yeah,
according to shaitan is in our blood also.
yeah.
Nafs is,
That's a fascinating one. Yeah,
and also malaika is also within us because
sure.
they write
Yeah,
whatever we do, uh,
yeah.
documentations and everything. So how are they related to shaitan, nafs, malaika, and I don't know what else is within our
Sure. Then the nafs, the ruh,
ruh?
for example, the ruh, um, the aql. Right. So this is all really fascinating. That what are these things, these entities? How do they? Well, we know there's an interplay of these things, but how? And right. So, well, the nafs would be, well, the way I would understand a lot of these things, and I'll give a diversity of some views as I'm going along as well, is that consciousness is the ruh. that consciousness, for us, that we kind of tap into, it is ultimately out of the ruh. Now, by tapping into or transmitting this kind of this interplay of this body with consciousness, what happens is from infancy there is an individual story that emerges.
Mhm.
This I, Anna, this subjectivity that emerges from this consciousness that we now have becomes the ego. It is what we call the nafs. So the nafs is my individual kind of story, my ego, my identity, right? This becomes the nafs, which is a result of me having consciousness, of having ruh, and having a body. But as an infant, I start to develop this ego, this ana, that I am something as well. I exist. Okay, what am I? Because you would, I guess, you would have animals that live, but they wouldn't have this kind of story going on in their head.
Mhm.
They wouldn't have this, that I am this is me who does this, who will be doing this, who will. They don't have that. They do have a consciousness, of course. Depends how we mean consciousness. Obviously, consciousness, it's one of those tricky words. It's so difficult to define. It's like saying love in English, muhib, Allah, that, uh, that so it's like love. It becomes so difficult to define. You say, well, what is love? Is it care? Is it affection? Is it what? And it's all of these things, and it's something else as well, which every one of us knows it, but when we try to put it into words, it keeps moving around. And so consciousness is like that as well. So animals do have consciousness, plants have consciousness to, one could argue that there's consciousness all around us, one could argue, but there is a different type of consciousness that humans um, tap into, or that we exhibit, which is very different to how animals have. They seem to have a very low level compared to us. Like, we have this consciousness where we can, um where I have a story, you have a story, where we can reflect on ourselves, we can think, plan for the future, we can. And I suppose the part of that faculty that comes with solving problems, that is the aql side, the kind of intellect, that is that facet. Now, okay, so this is coming back to the nafs that's being created. There's some kind of, it's a consequence of this material interplaying with consciousness. Now, I don't agree with the fact that the brain produces consciousness. I disagree with that. I feel that the brain somehow taps into consciousness.
Mhm.
That the human brain somehow, so consciousness is somehow out there and we tap into it. But as a result, we create this nafs, our own individual stories. So there is now, within this realm, within this dunya, within this alam, right?
Mhm.
Within this configuration, as I like that word, right? There is something. There is like forces at play. Now, many forces are, obviously, there's physical forces like gravity and other things, but there's also strange forces which we don't understand. Just as we don't understand consciousness, we don't understand the ruh, but we understand that the ruh, the consciousness, is what's giving rise to us. There is sometimes like this negative force that is at play. This negative force interacts with our consciousness and with our nafs, the result of which it brings out a darker side of ours. That personified, we would call the shaitan or the shayateen. And how exactly does it do it? We don't know exactly how it does it, but we know it does it. And we know it's tied so deeply into our unconscious mind. So we have our conscious mind, which is part of it. So imagine you've got this iceberg, but
Mhm.
what is under the ocean is the unconscious mind. And that unconscious mind is connected with this, like the iceberg underneath is connected with this ocean. So that ocean is the collective unconscious, how we all somehow have some connection. It's how Ibn Arabi would say that that would be the alamul khayal that we're all connected in. Now, so similarly, the way there is this negative force that when it interacts with our unconscious, it brings out, sometimes it allows us to bring, it brings a negativity. Now, the negativity could be really evil thoughts. It could be like you're having really horrible evil thoughts. But it could also be that it plays on our human material self, on our animal like side. It exacerbates that. So these, like, let's say this wanting that we have, this lacking, it kind of, it tries to, it amplifies our needs, like food, this greed. Like, you see, so some, like, let's say having a hunger is natural. Being hungry when you haven't eaten or being thirsty is natural. It's a blessing from Allah. Otherwise, we would die, would perish. But this negativity, if it amplifies it, it can turn hunger into greed, which is a different, well, what is greed? It's a kind of hunger, a literal and a metaphorical for things. So now coming back to with every negative, there will be a positive. Just as in this dunya, Allah has particles as antiparticles. There's always negative, there's always positive. There's matter, there's antimatter. There's protons, antiprotons. Now you will have, everything will have its opposite. So there is this positive, angelic kind of amplification to our thoughts, to our wishes, to us sometimes having good, pious aspirations, to sometimes having hope, having inspiration. Even inspiration is from the word to inspire, the spirit coming within you. Now, to Ibn Arabi, Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, he would say that, look, this dunya, according to Ibn Arabi and many other great scholars of Islam, this dunya is a tajalli
Mhm.
of a dunya between this dunya and the world of pure spirit, pure ruh, pure consciousness. He says that there is a world in between, and that world, which he calls the barzakh, or he calls it alam al-mithal, alam al-khayal. This world is like a manifestation of it. It's like a hologram manifestation of it. But in that world, the the things that are happening with a different coding. It's like saying that, imagine you've got a flat, kind of like a disk now, or a device, but this device, it will play something like a 3D movie. Now, the way it's encoded in here, you're not going to find the actors and all of that in here. You're going to find digital coding, which looks nothing like the people. So Ibn Arabi says that in Alamul Mithal, this Alamul Mithal, he says, is the, what we today would say is the deep unconscious. He says that is the world we go when we dream. He says in that world, coding takes place. That is the world of Malaika. That is the world of all these things. We are connected to it because it is our unconscious mind that is connected to it. In that world, for example, today, you, me, may suddenly be getting more rizq. In that world, rizq may be like a particular symbol, a code. But here it manifests as this payment comes through. I get a new client. You get a new business deal. You get a new job. You get a new. This is the manifestation in this world. But in Alamul Khayal and Mithal, it's not looking like that. It's looking like, It's a divine decree. It may look like some kind of coding. So angels are interacting with us there. And the angelic thing is causing this positive, this good kind of, almost like this battle between, because in our unconscious with us, between something good and something bad whispering, that our interactions, we may suddenly get hope one day. You get a eureka moment. Yes, that could be the manifestation or the expression of an angelic encounter. It could be, in Jungian psychology, they say, as Carl Jung said, that people don't have ideas, ideas have people. That So similarly, what if these ideas, these positive things, one, are manifestations of angels that are engaging, whatever that means, in that world? Now, we in this world, how do we understand this? To some people, they might understand it at one level by saying, well, oh, I have a physical creature, let's say, that is standing on one shoulder, whispering into my ear, and one is bad and one is good. Some people might understand it like that. Some people might understand, no, it's not on my shoulder, it's in my head. So inside my head, I've got a physical kind of like a ghost-like creature that is like a spirit. And one is a good spirit, that's an angel, and one is a bad spirit, and that's a devil. And they might understand it like that. This is personified. You see, nothing is to say, like the Quran doesn't say these are necessarily, that an angel looks like a human or it looks like a creature. This is our reading into it. This is our imagination computing it. Some could understand, in the in Tafsir al-Manar, for example, one of the interpretations given is that this could be forces. He says like quwwa. So you could get different kind of these like force fields. Like today in you have quantum physics, but then you have quantum field theory, which tries to reconcile between sum of relativity and quantum physics. So what it says is, before how we thought, well, let's say there's nothing, and now there's this atom here, there's this electron, or there's this nucleus, and so there's nothing, and then there's this thing. Now, in quantum field theory, everything is fields. Fields exist. So these fundamental fields, like quark fields, electron fields, however we want to understand them, they exist. Right. Now, in this field, you get an excitation. The moment there is an excitation, that manifests as a quark, or it manifests as a particular, subatomic structure. So the fields already exist. Now, this is something that I know Dr. Rupert Sheldrake highlights he posits that what if angels are angelic fields? That they manifest as it's like saying how in quantum fields that when there's an excitation, it manifests. So in his book, The Physics of Angels, which is a really fascinating book, by the way, he says that what if, and Dr. Rupert Sheldrake at one point wanted to become Muslim. It's a shame he didn't really. He said he really wanted to become Muslim because he was so drawn to the mystic Sufi way of Islam. He lived in India amongst Muslims for many years. And he's a great psychologist, one of the greatest British psychologists we have right now. But he said that the reason he didn't in the end was because of Muslims. Like he felt that it was just too, the too kind of judging and everything. So in the end, he just kind of left it. But he still holds it very dear to him now, and he is a Christian then. So he just kind of resorted back to his Christian heritage from Cambridge. But the point is that this physics of angels, this point of angels being angelic fields. So these are some theories on however we understand it there is flexibility. So the Quran allows people to use their imaginative faculties to understand things. So, for example, there's a verse in the Quran um, which says that when depicting hell and certain entities like trees or certain things in hell, that طلعوها, this particular tree, it emerges in hell, in Jahannam. طلعوها كأنها رؤوس الشياطين. So the emergence of this tree, this is a verse of the Quran, is right. So the emergence of this tree is طلعها, the way it's kind of appears is as though you can see many heads of demons, shayateen. Now, this is one of the most, amazing verses speaking about imaginative faculties, because the Mufassirin here will write, Ibn Ashur and many others as well, will write that you see, nobody has seen a shayateen. So Allah is calling you here to understand this. He's saying, طَلْعُهَا كَأَنَّهَا رُؤُوسُ الشَّيَاطِينِ. Or the verse of the Quran is, but it mentions that the tree is like the heads of shayateen, but nobody has seen heads of shayateen. But the verse is calling you to use your imagination. It is not calling for a one-to-one fit ratio. It is just calling you to use your imaginative faculty. So it's a beautiful, a powerful verse on showing the beauty of imagination. So, right. So I know it sounds that's adding layers. I'm adding layers of understandings and complexity, because these topics are very complex. The more you get into them, there's layers to truth. There's I suppose there's, the deeper you want to get, things get more complex in unraveling. Simply put, we are creatures who are animals. We are, insan is hayawanun natiq. We are hayawan. We are this animal, this kind of almost, this, what modern scientists will say, the third chimpanzee. We are something that looks a bit like, but we, as Allah says, there's something incredible about us, that Allah has karramna Bani Adam, and we are fi ahsani taqweem. Allah has created us, but then allowed us the potential to be asfala safilin. So we kind of oscillate between this angelic expression, a manifestation of the divine names on earth, to becoming a manifestation of just horrid, bestial, animalistic. We can become worse than animals, or we can become, you know, like angelic almost in our, and this potential only insan has. So I don't know if that gives, I hope that gives some guidance, some clarity, uh, how these things are interplaying, that there is this shayateen, this negativity, this which brings out this darker side of us. Now, what is it? We know that it somehow is involved. When you say it runs in our blood, what that means is it works at an unconscious level.
Mhm.
You see, how does the blood work? The blood is not part of your, it's part of the parasympathetic nervous system. It works without you making it work. We don't make breath work. It just works for us. The heart just pumps. If it was left to us, we'd be dead. It's not part of the conscious. It's part of the unconscious system we have. So the shaitan yajri majra dam, that this negativity works at the unconscious level with us, just as blood works unconsciously for us. And it is inescapable, that we can't escape thoughts or As long as we live, it will be there. So as long as the blood flows, we are alive. The moment it stops flowing, that's the end of us. So yeah, this this fascinating relationship we have, between angels and demons, finding our place. Allahu Akbar.
So how about the Iblis? Iblis and
Mm.
Shaitan, are they?
Yeah. So Iblis is this shaitan personified. Now that's what he is. He is this. Now, how do we understand Iblis? Do we understand Iblis? So there's many ways. So in my tafsir lesson that I have, let's see, it was called Quran Quest. I think it was the second class done. So it says, I think, verse 1 to 29 Al Baqarah. So in that, I go into a lot of detail about this. So if people want to watch that, they can see, the greater detail that I'm going into. But in summary, there's different ways of understanding this. I'm not here to say what is right or wrong, but I'm just saying there's different ways of looking at the world. They're not necessarily wrong depending on how you're seeing the world. So one way of looking is that shaitan is this creature, this kind of anthropomorphized, personified, uh, this individual that has been created in this particular way. And that's an absolute valid way of reading the Quran, reading the Islamic sciences. Now, and he somehow ties into each and every one of us. He sends either a different shaitan that's connected to him, or he himself is connected to all of us. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking, and in that tafsir, I go through the different tafsir. I go through tafsir al-Manar. I go through many tafsir in that, but one of them in the end is also Manar, showing that, you see, and in that I show many interpretations that the Mufassir is going through. He's not necessarily going with just this. He's saying, look, one way of looking at it is like this. One way of looking at it is like this. So, for example, is he a fallen angel? Some people say Iblis is an angel, and he's a fallen angel. Lucifer, the fallen, which actually should be the fallen star, which people have mixed up with the fallen angel. So many Muslims believe that Iblis is an angel, and he's an angel gone bad. So this is actually, many Muslims believe this, surprisingly, and I believe Imam Nawawi says that it's the majority of Muslims believe this. Although I don't personally believe that, but I'm just saying that. But one could believe it. Actually, I could believe it, depending on how you look at this whole equation. So that's one way. And now, even though the Quran says that kana min al jinn, fafasaqa an amri rabbih, but Imam Nawawi and other people here say kana min al jinn does not mean the jinn. Jinn means the unseen. So they say he's not jinn a min al jinniya, or they say kana malakan min al jinn a min al ghaib, or min qism al jinn, as in min qism al ghaib. So, and then or some say jinn was a category of certain angels that were not these jinn, but they were angels also called the jinn, because the jinn meant the unseen. So now some Muslims say no, Iblis was from the jinn always. So there used to be jinn on earth and before insan, and the jinn were good and bad, and some jinn became so good that he became like a wali amongst the jinn. He became this really pious jinn. And then he, mazala yartaqi fi hadhihi ar-rutab wa darajat, and he became so pious, and he started to now pray amongst the angels. And now he was, although he wasn't from the angels, but he was such a good jinn that he was from the most pious muwahid jinn from so he used to be in the company of angels, and then he got arrogant when he was asked to, and this was his downfall. So some people understand it like that. Some people understand that here, shayateen or shaitan, because in Arabic it meant this something mashata, this thing that becomes turbulent, this obstacle, this barrier, this was a negativity. It is a quwwa as one of the interpretations. It was like like something that brings out a reaction. This is then personified in the narrative and narrativized and presented as, so that's one interpretation, that we don't quite understand it, but it's not necessarily a person, although it's fine to treat it like a person, but it's not. It's like saying, if I treat my anger like a person, oh, I hate this anger. But what is anger? It's not a person. But I say, oh, I had these thoughts again today. What are thoughts? If I'm treating it like a person, yeah, but it's not that it necessarily is a person, but to treat it like a person still works. So one layer of the interpretation. So, like I said, one interpretation is Iblis was from the angels. One is he was from the shayateen, the jinn, but he became a good, very pious wali jinn. That and then he kind of rebelled against Allah. One's interpretation is that it's more speaking about when Allah created creation, that there were these force fields that interact. And some bring out positivity. Allah has created them in a way when they will interact with the ruh, you will be inspired, and that is called the malaika. And they will serve functions. They will convey revelation. They will do different things. They keep existence together, reality together. But it has its opposite, which is negative. But then you see, because all force fields ultimately have one origin, because there is a unification. So in that sense, one could say the jinn, the shayateen were from the malaika, that they were one in essence, because the force fields in essence were united before they split. But then we were also part of these force fields. I mean, look, if you think about it, even from the physics sense, all of after the, if you look at the Big Bang, after it, all of creation was a singularity. And from this singularity, first of all, the force field, that's okay. Our force fields, gravity, electromagnetism, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, these things emerge. But even all of them at some point were just one. Everything you see today at some point was one in existence. It was part of the singularity. So you see, it doesn't matter how you see things. Different people will view things differently. Some of us are more left brain. Some of us are more right brain. That's just how we see the world. Some of us will see the world through more metaphor. We will be more right brained. The West today, unfortunately, is heavily left brained. And it relies more on this kind of, and unfortunately, the dominating culture today, which has been influenced by, you see, it's ironic because they think it's not influenced by the West, but it's actually ironically influenced by the West, even though this whole that there is this this kind of revolt against the West. So let's say you take something like the dogmatism of the Salafi movement, or some of these dogmatist very kind of dogmatic movements. They, in their apparent, are very anti-West, but as you break down, they're actually emanating a lot of the kind of the attitudinal ontologies coming from this Western kind of dogmatic way of looking. Ironically, that they meet similarly. One could say, well, okay, maybe, it's just a human condition. Fair enough. That's also an interpretation. But the true Islamic, like if you look in the Islamic tradition, there is all this speak of all of these things in the tafsir. I mean, look, Sheikh Ibn Arabi is almost 800 years ago. Before him, you have this whole, the mystic Ain al-Qudat, al-Hamdani, he has this whole treatise which has recently been brought into print about Iblis being the great lover of God symbolically, which is fascinating because you see, one of the things that the great mystics in Islam did, in traditional Islam, was they showed this poetic side because they were heavily, you could tell these people were heavily right brained. They weren't left brained individuals, heavily right brained. So they bring up this love story because it's fascinating. It's a poetic expression, really, that what is Iblis's problem in the Islamic narrative? His problem is he's refusing to do sajda. In one way, he's refusing to do sajda except only to God. Because remember, he used to do sajda to God. He refuses to do sajda to anything other than God. And he does not see in Adam that charisma that I would turn my sujood away from Allah and even loan it to Adam for a moment. And in fact, in hearing that Allah gives this permission and invitation to bow, whether it's the forces of creation or powers or everything, to bow to insan, that Allah has put in insan this capacity that all of nature will be, and all these fields will be subdued to him. He finds in that such a visceral rejection, that what is in this thing, what is this insan? It's nothing but a third chimpanzee. What's so special about him? He looks at Adam, says, "Khalaqtani min narin wa khalaqtahu min tin." This is, what is this? Look at the power of fire. Now it's interesting because fire obviously is tied into forces and combustion and all of this, but the fact that creation begins with, even if we look at the Big Bang, it's beginning with a sense of combustion. That it is the singularity begins with combustion, this Big Bang, this fire. Because what is combustion in its manifest form is fire for us, obviously, in speaking of combustion. Now he says, "Khalaqtani min narin." See, I am way more primordial than this thing. "Khalaqtahu min tin." You want me to turn my sajda away from you and bow to him? Kalla wa hayat. But in this, there was a takabbur that is being shown. So Ayn al-Qadat al-Hamdani, he has this treatise about shaitan being this, this kind of great lover of God that's gone astray. How this and this is poetic. Obviously, it's poetic. We're not saying that, we don't say that generally, but there's poetic license in saying that this is this power gone astray, this power of love. But yeah, so all of these ways of interpreting, there's room for it. It depends on how you see the world. Are you right brain? Are you brained? Are you left brained? How do you see the world? Are you somebody more poetic, which is right brain people? They are more, they see the world through lenses, like they have a propensity towards poetry, towards art, towards metaphor, towards symbolism. Then you have very left-brained people who may appreciate poetry as well. They may appreciate these things, but they're not driven in that way. They're not driven to the holistic. They're more to the individual things. Very much what this data, kind of crunching world is all about. It's about statistics. It's about numbers. It's about individuals. It's about just crunching, very kind of left brain centered, so driven, sorry. So yeah, so to me, all of these things are meanings that we can take away. So whether we choose to take this one or that one is entirely, it's wherever a person finds themselves. Right. Okay. I don't know if I've just gone off there, said,
Well, but
been yapping away.
yeah. Well, just if Shaitan or Iblis, Jinn, and Malaika, if they are all considered separate entities, like
Yeah.
one is made of nar, one is made of nur, and
Yeah.
made of dust or clay.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
How does it now combining all together? How does it
So look,
get to our
let's n-
body?
let's take our real world as an example. Let's not even take let's take something that is scientific and material to
Mhm.
illustrate this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take this world and us as an example. Now, this world is made of matter. Whether I look at this or I look at myself or this chair or this microphone or this screen, it's all made of matter, which is made of compounds, or molecules, which is made of atoms.
Mhm.
Nobody, not a single person is going to deny this, what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
Not a sane person, anyway, is going to deny that the world is made of atoms. But then atoms are also made of subatomic particles. So an atom could be a different atom. You could have hydrogen, you could have different kind of atoms, helium, you could have uranium, you could have different atoms, atomic structures, right? So elements within the periodic table. But you could break these down into its nucleus, into protons, into neutrons. You could break them down into electrons. You could break these things even further. You could break them further into quarks. Now, when you break even an atom, you take an atom, right? An atom, which everything is made up of atoms. Now, then the atom will be made up of whether it's going to be an electron, whether it's going to be a proton, whatever it is. But everything is made up of atoms, every single thing.
Mhm.
Now, atoms are 99% empty space. 99.9%. Do you know, it's like saying that the nucleus within the atom is so small. It's like saying that, let's say, I don't know, like let's say you've got a forest somewhere,
Mhm.
wherever, whichever forest you want to choose, and then you've got the solar system. The entire solar system is the atom, and the
Mhm.
thing inside that actually exists is just like that forest.
Mhm.
So how is it that these same, you know, protons, these quarks are making these different things? How is it the atoms here are making a different atom? When you put quarks in a certain way, they manifest as a different entity. When you put them in a different way, they manifest. I'm talking science now. I'm talking things nobody that knows this could deny it. This is how our world is made. It doesn't appear that way to us. This appears pretty solid. But physics will tell us, yes, it appears solid because of the kind of reaction, the force field that the electron has created in the thing. So we can't go through it. But there's things, for example, you could take neutrinos, you take many things that actually go, billions go through us every day. Every day. They're massless. They go through us every day. You just type in neutrinos and see that they're going through us. They're coming through the earth every day. We don't realize it. So I would say that, look, if somebody said to you, you are empty space, 99% empty, not there, it may sound crazy to us, but it depends what angle and level we're speaking from. You see, this is why when we say from an Ibn Arabi perspective, we both exist and don't exist at the same time. It sounds crazy to people, to some people, but it depends what angle you're coming from. The fact that everything is 99% not there, it betrays our perception. But then the perception is a configuration, it's a game, it's a simulation that we're in. So look, how does it work? How does the coding work? What we're trying to do, you and me are inside a video game. Let's say we're inside a video game. This is our video game. We're playing it. We're going, we're eating food, we're on a mission, we're doing things. But we're trying to understand that how does the coding of the game work? How is a game coded? But the coding will be nothing like the game. You see, the coding looks nothing like what the game looks like. The game looks like a game. Like I'm walking in the road, I'm sitting in a car, I'm driving a car. It looks like this world. I mean, to an extent, it's an artificial version, but it's a game. But in the game, you and me are trying to figure out, I wonder how the coding of this game works. And we're thinking that the coding looks something like the game looks like. But outside the game, you and me know that the coding to the game looks nothing like the game. It's just digits and letters and it's coding. So, but you and me know that outside the game, but inside the game, we can't know that. So this is what's happening. People inside this configuration are thinking angels, demons, they must work how we work. Because it's like you and me inside the game trying to figure out the coding, thinking the coding looks like the game. But once we step outside of the game, you and me know that a code looks nothing like the game itself. It's just code. It's written code. So that's how, you see, this world, this world is but a configuration, a game. That it's been coded divinely by Allah. So it manifests in certain ways to us. But the coding will not look like the actual configuration. That is a misassumption. So when we're thinking, how do angels work? We're too busy thinking that they work the way our world works. And that's where the mistake lies. The coding is not going to reflect the game. It will give it will give a manifestation to the game, but it will not look anything like the game. And if you looked at it, you would not think it is just as if you looked at coding, you wouldn't think this is a computer game. I mean, unless you knew coding, but it wouldn't look like the game. It wouldn't look like, cars and things. And so, yeah. Right. So,
Well, this is a very good explanation, but sometimes some of the imams, they're making it more complicated understanding it because of a hadith that I heard it from one of the imam at Juma prayer, say that if you don't get up for Fajr prayer, shaitan is gonna urinate in your mouth.
in your mouth.
This is in Bukhari.
Okay.
So
Okay.
how you're gonna explain that? I mean,
does it say in the mouth? I thought, okay, maybe okay. But I thought it says he ties a knot on your ear or something and you sleep. But that's fascinating because okay, does it say he urinates in your mouth? I don't remember that. But I remember one that he ties certain knots, like on your listening, like he ties. But that's fascinating because you know why I found that, right? Somebody's saying,
you search under
yeah, sure. But the knots are fascinating because when we fall asleep, right? So when we switch off into sleep, our consciousness switches off, but it doesn't entirely switch off. Like you see, there is a difference between being asleep unconscious and being unconscious, like under anesthesia, for example. There is an entirety of things that are switched off in the brain. Like when they're scanning, they can see. When you're asleep, the brain is still active. It's just active at a lesser level, and it has its own way of acting. So it kind of drops its waves and operates differently. And then there's paradoxical sleep when we go into REM, where the brain acts like it's awake. It kind of like it's, if you read the electroencephalograms, it's called paradoxical. So when we dream, the they call it REM, rapid eye movement. The eyes are moving, although we're asleep. In the cycle, the sleep cycle, so REM, so you have stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and then REM. And then it goes 2, 3, 4, REM, 3, 4, REM, 3, 4, REM, and then it carries on, and then you wake up. So the sleep cycles, these rhythms that we have, they so what I was going to say
You're
is
right.
that the
And
auditory, the ears
yeah, urinate and
actually remain connected to, it's the one thing you have that does not disconnect. So it's fascinating. Sound, if a person is in a coma,
Mhm.
in a deep coma, one way of bringing them back is talking to them. So because the auditory faculties remain connected. And it's fascinating, even the shamans, the great shamans will speak of how consciousness, it always remains connected through sound. So it's fascinating that the hadith then personifies that, look, that for a moment, even your channel to this pure consciousness that remains connected, the shaitan blocked it.
Mhm.
Because you didn't wake up to hear the adhan. In a way, it's a beautiful expression to show that. So, but it's right. As to the shaitan literally urinating, no, I mean, that's not how we understand it. I'm sure maybe some people literally understand things like that, but that's a figurative, it's figurative symbolic speech. It's not literal. No. And to be honest, I don't remember it being like he. Does it say somebody said he maybe they urinates in the ear? But
Yeah.
saying about the ear may make sense in the
In the
sense that,
yeah, but I think it was that's what I
because I remember the hadith about tying knots in the ear, but even if there is there is a hadith about urinating in the ear, it's symbolic language for how that the channel is contaminated, is being blocked, despite it being a pure channel to consciousness. Because sound, sound is fundamentally, it's crazy because we are visual creatures and our optic nerve is like 25 times greater than our auditory nerves, but the connection to the divine will come often through sound.
Mm.
It's even revelation, it comes through sound. And it's, even the prophets in the hadith in Sahih Bukhari said when revelation came, it came like the buzzing of a bee, like that sound. It comes with this vibrational, there are vibrations. And I know nowadays string theory is kind of out of fashion, but even with that, at a fundamental level, being is vibrations, frequency. So sound is much more powerful. So I find that metaphor symbol, that the shaitan urinating or tying knots on what allows us to have sound, as a very captivating kind of image to just show that, look, sometimes we get cut off. But sleep, if you're sleeping, by the way, you're not at fault if you just slept, because you don't have control. There is a hadith where Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh, he oversleeps for subh salah, and the Prophet comes and wakes him up. But he doesn't take him to task. He just, in fact, the hadith ends with them with it being said that, look, this isn't something we don't have control over. If a person oversleeps, it's not something like don't go hard on yourself for things like this. Sure, try to wake up, but it's not like, don't be, don't think, oh my god, this is something, this isn't like it's just human. So if you wake up, obviously we try to wake up, but if you don't, it's something just very human. In the hadith, the companions and the Prophet, when he's with them, they allocate somebody to wake them up, but then they all fall asleep and they miss subah, and it's in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. And then the Prophet says, you know what, let's get up, let's go from this place, and then they pray subah later on, at this place. And this is why the hadith, that if you man nama an salatin or nasiyaha falyusalliha hina dhakaraha. If you forgot about your prayer or you fell asleep, when you remember it, just pray. And there was a person in the time of the Prophet who, and this is from the Mushkilul Hadith, because a lot of scholars traditionally didn't know where to put this hadith, that a companion came to the Prophet and there's a longer story that his wife complains about him, about certain things, but I guess it's the psychology of men and women, women. She complains to the Prophet about him, and they're newly married, and she has some, she's a bit unhappy, and you have, I suppose, people have a lover's tiff, let's say. They have some disagreements, but amongst the disagreements, when she's complaining, she says to the Prophet that, he does this and he does this. And she says, and he doesn't even wake up for Salah. You get the religious one in there, that he doesn't even wake up for Fajr, for Subah. Malikiya call Fajr Subah. So she says, well, and he doesn't even wake up for Fajr. It's like you get sometimes some person is complaining about relationships. I see it a lot, because of the kind of life coaching or the perspective sessions, as I call them, that I do. So often people are going through relationship issues, and they're often going through divorce, or they're looking for separation, and maybe sometimes they work it out. But so, when you're dealing with people and you're kind of engaging with them, they will often, when they bring up issues, so they'll say, he's bad with, let's say it's the woman, often he's bad with this, or men do this as well. But the women will often say, well, and he doesn't even pray. They'll bring that in as well, like, since you're a Mufti, let's bring the Islamic side in, that, and he doesn't even pray, so in this hadith, the woman says to the Prophet, and he doesn't even wake up for Salah, for Subah. So the Prophet calls him, and this hadith, it's in several books. It's in Abu Dawood and other books as well. And so when the Prophet calls him, and he says, and he deals with the issues, and he says, and what's this that he says, do you not wake up for Subah? Do you not wake up for Salah? And it's a very captivating hadith, by the way. And I'll end this with this hadith, as a gem, really, to take away, because it's really baffling as well, because it's one of those that you don't know where to put this hadith. And this is why the traditional scholars were in, where do we put this? Where does this go? It's like a piece of the jigsaw, but it doesn't seem to fit somewhere. So the Prophet says, and what's this? You don't wake up for prayer? And his reply, he says, Ya Rasulullah, he says, and you can Google the words. He says, Inna qawmun, we are a people. La nastayqidhu illa ba'da tulu'i shams. He said, we are a people who, we don't wake up till after sunrise. And the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, rahmatan lil alamin. It's something. It's a side of the Prophet that we, unfortunately, sometimes is eclipsed from us due to our own shortcomings. A mercy for the world, a true emblem of love, of divine love. The Prophet said, he said, إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظْتَ فَصَلِّ. He said, when you wake up, pray. That's it. He didn't say, who are these people? What is your people? What do you mean you are a people who wake up after? How dare you? The arrogance, don't you know? Man taraka salah faqad kafar. And, man ahana. وَمَنْ شَكَّ فِي كُفْرِهِ فَقَدْ. That's another thing we got to discuss someday. This crazy fatwa. Not only is such and such a kafir, if you have doubt in their kufr, you're a kafir. This kind of Cartesian kufr. Right, so I like that term, actually, Cartesian kufr. But the point, but this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظْتَ فَصَلِّ. That's it. He said, you know what? He said, So when you wake up, pray. And he went. And there's just something about the way in which the Prophet engages people, the rifq, the gentleness, the kindness. And there is this balance that has to be. And I know today there is this claim to, and I do feel that this, value in definitely in much of what is being said as well, that we shouldn't lose this balance of masculinity and femininity, that there should be. And I definitely agree, that there is, and especially in the West, the it's become, it's withering away. There isn't an understanding sometimes of what should be masculine. And I hate the term toxic masculinity, but that said, this balance, the way the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is the heights, the summit, you know the the pinnacle of ex, of an example for us, and ever so masculine in the perfect ways, but gentle with the gentleness. See, it's not about this kind of super macho thing. It's not about this kind of and there's nothing wrong with that if a person is naturally that way. But also that there is this gentleness that is very manly as well, that having control as a leader. And you see that in these kind of ahadith, that rifq. Right, Mohib, it's been amazing. It's been beautiful, honestly, speaking to you. I'm so glad you came on and you brought up these topics and we discussed them.
Thank you very much, Mufti Sahib.
Right, so shukran, and we'll catch up with you. Take care of yourself. Allah keep you blessed and bless the people. Allah. California, what a place. I've got to visit it sometime, inshallah.
Sure.
Take care. Speak soon. Assalamu alaikum. People, that was Mohib from California, and what a discussion. We really just lost myself here. And I guess that's the power of conversation, that one can lose themselves in it. And so we covered from just so much, from reality to the ontology of being, to understanding the concept of shaitan and malaika, shayateen and malaika, and the interplay within our reality, to the verses of the Quran and the different interpretations of what Iblis was and could be, to this really understanding how some of these hadith, like not waking up for subah. People, take very good care of yourselves. It was a pleasure as always. And yeah, thank you. I like that, this kind of, we'll discuss that in one of a future episode on the whole psychology of that, this Cartesian kufr, this thing of, وَمَنْ شَكَّ فِي كُفْرِهِ فَقَدْ كَفَرْ. Cogito ergo sum. Kafartu. Instead of cogito, that would be, kafartu or ukaffiru ergo sum. But it's a very dangerous fatwa. We don't go with that. We believe in welcoming people to this caravan of iman. And the Prophet said, Bashiru wala tunaffiru. These, what could be better words than the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that invite people, don't scare them away. That's not our duty. Some people might do it, but it's not us. See, we are to invite. And may Allah bless each and all. Allah bless us all. Ameen. And whatever difficulty you're facing, whatever hardships you're going through, whatever struggles, no matter how cumbersome and how insurmountable, unmanageable it seems, hang in there. Stay strong. When things become very difficult, Allah, as you exhale, try to take a double, and then as you exhale, Allah. With difficulty will come ease. So stay strong, people. Allah bless you all. Keep you always smiling. Salamullahi alaikum wa khuda hafiz.